LSU announcing earlier today that they've agreed to a home-and-home with Utah, 2031 and 2032. The 2031 game in Salt Lake, 2032 in Baton Rouge. Verge, Ausberry, Executive Deputy AD out at LSU, good enough to jump aboard for a few minutes to talk about it. As always, Verge, thanks for the time, man. How are you?
Doing well. Appreciate being with you today.
Always. All right, so Utah. That is not one that would have come to the forefront of most people's minds when we talk about future scheduling. How did this come about?
Matt, we've been talking to a lot of people in a lot of games. As you see, we're going further out now in the scheduling process. In today's world, you have to do that because everybody's locking up, especially the big games and the Power 5 games early. So we were talking to a lot of different teams. I've been watching Utah during the year. They were top. You remember they were a team in the playoff position early in the year and throughout the late part of the football season. When it came around, we started talking, negotiating, and saying, how we want to do this thing. And home and home, Salt Lake City, a Pac-12 team, great place for LSU to travel. So let's try to get the game on. That's how it came about.
Are they going to fix the liquor laws in Utah by 2031?
It's a beautiful area.
Verge, I went and looked it up today. Bars, they can't serve until 11:30. I went, oh no.
It need to be a late game. That part of it.
So you and I have had this conversation so many times over the years about scheduling and what factors that go in. And especially with some of the neutral site games, we've talked a lot about recruiting, right? Like Houston and Dallas and Atlanta. So Utah isn't really a recruiting hotbed. Did that come into play at all here?
This time it came into the Pac-12 opponent. There's a lot of things going into this match, but also, a new place for our fans to visit, somewhere they've never been before. We did the game in Washington a few years ago. We're looking to do things on the West Coast, and Utah came available. The area Salt Lake City came available. We're like, you know what? Let's take a shot at that, take a chance at that. There are some other people who came back to us to do games in the future that we had played already. We like to spread it around. A very diverse, different type of game for our fan base. I think somewhere our fans will enjoy going.
Something else that I know you and I have talked a bunch about is you have to have a willing partner too. Like there's some teams that have said they play you, but they may not want to make a return trip, or they would want to just play one game at a neutral site. So, if you had to, I don't know if you can name names, but ballpark, how many options do you have of willing partners that want to, Power 5 that want to do a home and home?
It's amazing, Matt. The tide has changed a little bit. It used to be people didn't want to put their teams in playing a big SEC school, and sometimes you hear that from certain people. But today's world, I think everybody knows now the way we schedule. We set the tone in scheduling where the schedule sets you up for the national championship. So if you're in a Power 5 conference and you want to play that big game at the end of the year, you have to have these type of games on your schedule. So I've been getting a lot of calls from a lot of different teams, surprisingly, from teams I never thought of wanting to play us in games before. And now they're starting to call.
Verge Ausberry is with us here for a couple more minutes, Executive Deputy AD. You also mentioned scheduling in advance because games get locked up. Do you have it in your mind how far in it? Because this is, 11, 12 years. How far in advance that you'd like to have games locked up?
We're going to have about 15 years here pretty soon. And just have the big game locked up. And then you can work around and move around with all the other games you have on your schedule and fit it into place. The earlier you lock the big game up, the easier it is for you to really put your schedule together like we did with this year with Texas, how we had them set up that second game of the year. And so we like to look at the 15-year window, and we'll probably keep it there for a while. After the next 2 years, we start getting back into it again and see where we want to go, what direction we're going to go in. And, just because we have the game schedule out there doesn't mean that we might not play 2 Power 5 schools in a year. That's a possibility. That depending on the type of team we have coming back, yeah. And we know we've done it before. We've done it with West Virginia and Oregon. We've done it with North Carolina and West Virginia. We've done that before in the past. And sometimes it makes more sense to do it depending on how it fits into the schedule.
So what year are you going to play 2 Power 5 teams?
Matt, you have to weigh on that one.
What Power 5 teams are you going to play, Verge?
There'll be a place, and there'll be a team that people they understand names really, really quickly.
Does one of them sing "Hail to the Victors"?
Just hold on.
All right. Fair enough.
Get on that.
Hey, man, you know what would be? I'll just put my Michigan SC, especially with Ed here now, would be phenomenal if LSU locked up with SC. But I'm sure you're working. The other thing obviously was announced last week was the future neutral site game with Florida State. The question everyone asks obviously is, why did that end up neutral site instead of home and home?
We talked about that. We're talking about the other team, too, the other partner. They come to us, too, and say, look, where we can get the best bang for our buck. And, Florida State had 2 or 3 options. They were looking at playing the game, one being a home and one being some other places also. And we also wanted to play a neutral site game and say, okay, you know what, where do we get you? We wanted a game in New Orleans. Okay, Matt, we hadn't played in New Orleans other than the Tulane game and the bowl games. So we wanted to have a neutral site game in New Orleans. It was going to be great to have one in the city to open up the year. We had one when we transferred the BYU game from Houston to New Orleans. Mm-hmm. But when we looked at it, we were like, how would it be to open up the year with a Power 5 team in New Orleans, Louisiana? So we were talking, and Florida State back and forth. We went through this, and Florida State was like, hey, we would like to have a neutral site also this year. And also, you're talking about the income of these type of games. You're talking about over $5 million to play those type of games. And we thought it worked well to us, and Florida State thought it worked well for them. And we started talking on this deal for about a year and a half. We've been working on it, and finally got to the point where, after the national championship game in New Orleans, we want to make sure we keep that recruiting base there in New Orleans, and we want to have a game there. And going to Central Florida, going to the Orlando area where they wanted to have the game at, was a perfect match for us also. So, okay, let's do it. And that's how we do the home and home.
Verge, I am curious, too, and you mentioned a bit ago how sort of the scheduling philosophy has changed a little bit, right? Like how teams are now more willing to play these types of games because they realize to get to a championship game, like it not only does not hurt you, it helps you to play this type of game. But it's also interesting because it feels like, and I look ahead, man, you all have done exclusively home and homes with the exception of this series. Is that becoming more in vogue too, to go back on campus, or is this just something that internally LSU is doing, having listened to fans that said, we'd like these games on campus instead?
No, we do it now. We do it pretty much. You look at the schedule and say, okay, you know what makes more sense to us? Some games like a home and home, some games like a neutral site. We only want to play neutral site games in certain areas too, and it makes sense. You talk about the Wisconsin thing we did. We did Wisconsin and Houston, and we went back up to play in the Lambeau, which is a great experience for our program. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the schedule, how we put it together, it can be a neutral site or it could be a home and home. And talking to the other people you talk about playing also, sometimes they can't do a neutral site game. Sometimes they could do they have to do a home and home. Like dealing with Clemson, everything was on the table and came back to it. So, okay, you know what? We could do a home and home. But the way they play Notre Dame and that schedule where it rotates in the ACC, some years they have to have the home game, and some years they could do a neutral game. But that year it became a home and home, and Clemson was a place that we really wanted to do a home and home with because Death Valley, Tiger Stadium, all the same. We say let's do a game there, and that's when we decided let's just lock the Clemson game in. But everything is on the table when we start doing these things, Matt, and just try to figure out what's best for us and our program at the time.
Yeah. I would imagine that the getting is good right now with LSU on the football schedule to have a defending national champ and having these types of opportunities. So it's Verge. I mean, I would imagine for you, and in your playing days, I know you played against Florida State, yeah, when you played.
No, I didn't play.
Or you missed them by a year. They were 91, yeah.
Yeah. I played against Miami. I played against Notre Dame. I played against Ohio State. I played against North Carolina. Back then, there was only 6 SEC games, so played more out-of-conference games against bigger opponents.
Yeah. I mean,
today, the 8 games, you don't have to do that.
It feels like college football as a whole is getting back more to that, where you're seeing those types of games. I'm sure you enjoy that. I think all fans enjoy as well. And I look at this, man, Texas, UCLA, Florida State, Clemson, Oklahoma, Arizona State, Utah. I mean, it certainly is appealing. You see what LSU fans are going to have to look forward to, man. All right, we're going to wait on the announcement for Michigan and USC. Home and home's coming up here in a few years. But when those announcements come out, Verge, I'll bother you again. All right.
Now you'll be the first person I call.
I don't believe you at all, but I do appreciate the time as always, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, we'll see you. That's Verge Ausberry, the executive deputy AD out at LSU.